My next guest today is Gretchen Bridgers. She is a National Board Certified Elementary School teacher from Charlotte, North Carolina. In 2006, Gretchen received her bachelor's degree at Marist College in New York, and in 2010, she received her master's degree in curriculum and supervision from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Gretchen taught grades 2, 3, and 5 before transitioning into the role of a new teacher development coach for the New Teacher Project, TNTP. During this time, she also published her first book for new teachers called Elementary EDUC 101, What They Didn't Teach You in College, to help prepare future teachers for the realities of life in the classroom. With years of mentoring new teachers, providing professional development to school building staff, and presenting at district and national conferences, Gretchen has now invested her time solely to consulting individual teachers and school staff under her own company, Always a Lesson. Her blog, podcast, classroom resources, and professional development courses serve teachers worldwide. Welcome to the podcast, Gretchen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I really am interested in hearing a story about some of the time that you were in the trenches in terms of when you've coached teachers and have you worked through any difficult situations in your role as a coach?
Yeah, I'll take you on a little journey if you don't mind. So when I first started teaching, I thought I was prepared as anything. I had read all the books, obviously had my student teaching experience, had a great mentor, and I got into the classroom and realized very quickly a lot of my theory courses from college weren't translating into what happens when a kid pees his pants at your desk, or what happens when an angry parent shows up in the middle of your lesson. Like, I just didn't have practical experience, and I had to learn very quickly how to keep my cool, keep the lesson moving while troubleshooting all these things that happen every day at the elementary level. And I was assigned a mentor, thank goodness, but she was in a different grade level, which meant she was in a different hallway with a different schedule, and that was none of her fault. But I never went to her except for our formal meetings, which were just like a check sheet just to make sure legally we were meeting. So that burden fell on my colleagues to help me work through these blunders and figure it out and get the support I needed. So I very quickly learned how to help myself. So I joined Twitter chats and I met other educators and I just started asking tons of questions. I watched what they were doing. I tried things out. So as my career developed and I started helping and mentoring new teachers, I was like, I'm going to be what I wish I had. And so I threw out all the theory and the best practices, and I just helped them work through what's going to happen the second you walk in this classroom, and what are all the things that could potentially come up, and how do you move through some of those awkward situations without ruining the whole day for everybody. And I think that has been the feedback from everyone I've worked with is thank you for giving me the real stuff, the stuff that no one ever taught me, so that they could maybe skip an obstacle that I have had, or at least be ready when it shows up. So I would say that's kind of my mentality when I serve teachers, is to help them with the reality of what they're going to face.
Do you feel like a lot of what you learn in college is, it's like legislation, right? For IEPs, it's learning about educational psychology, but we don't really learn about how children's brain functions, right? It's more just the science, but I don't think educational teacher prep books have changed much in the last 20 years since I did my teacher prep program. And as you were saying, they're really not teaching you how to handle discipline situations, right? They're really not talking about how to, talk to a parent who's irate about something.
Yeah, you're so right. It was a lot of history, which was interesting, but get me to teach me how to teach, we could do this later. Or I learned all about these famous educators, which again is great. It's interesting, but I don't need to do that for a whole semester in college. My methods courses, which were how to teach reading, how to teach math, happened senior year, which to me is way too late. And then my student teaching happened, I think, towards the end of my junior year, which again is too late because my friends who had been with all these years got in the classroom and were like, I don't really like this. It's not what I thought it was going to be like. And so now they're bailing when they're almost across the finish line. So had we been in classrooms earlier, had we talked about how to teach earlier, people would have figured out whether it was for them, and teachers would graduate much more prepared for the reality. And I'm not saying that the theory and all that's not important, that there's not a place. There is. I just wouldn't have spent so much time on it, because you're preparing me to teach, and those things aren't as relevant as, like you said, brain development or classroom management or lesson design. And I just think I didn't get everything I put into it financially, for sure, to be prepared. And that was such a burden for me to have to figure it out while I'm also like, this is my first big girl job, and that has its own pressure. So it was just a lot of stress. And I'm sure first year teachers know exactly what I'm talking about. You're building the plane and flying it at the same time, and it's not going well.
So you're telling me that you had a mentor that was in a different grade level, probably a senior tenured teacher, but that was not somebody you used a lot for advice. So you used those people who were closest to you, who taught at your grade level. And did they give you good advice? Did they help you get through that first year?
Yeah, I went to my grade level, and I could tell based on their response that I was not bothering them, but they were trying to run their own classrooms, and they weren't assigned to me, and they didn't sign up to help me, and they were busy trying to get their computers up and running for the day and make their copies, and they can't help me right now. And so I had to figure out another plan. My assigned mentor is busy teaching when I'm prepping, and she's prepping when I'm teaching. So we weren't lined up until the end of the day, when I'd already had to figure out whatever to do in the moment. And I just started finding people, proximity, like in a different grade level, but at least across the hall, or my own grade level, to really lean on. And then I went beyond that into the World Wide Web and found all these teachers who were on fire for education through Twitter chats. And I started asking them questions and started watching what they were saying. And slowly I got all these tools, and I was able to not have to burden other people with all my silly questions, because it just, the timing was bad. It was there's always a fire to put out, and it was never like, hey, tomorrow I'm teaching this lesson I was thinking of. It's always like, oh my God, what do I do right now? And it was very hard, but I learned to build my own tribe and rely on the people who were willing and able to mentor me, and who had experience and were free to help. And I just am very thankful. And so when people do reach out to me saying, hey, I love what you're doing with your blog, your podcast, I'm a newer teacher, or I'm switching grade levels, or I'm switching schools, and I want to ask you a few questions, and I immediately see myself like, I'm not going to turn this person away because I have a lot of things to do. This person needs me, and I have the opportunity to go to someone else who might not give them the best of advice. And luckily, all the people I went to really helped me become successful, but not only like to rely on them, they helped me learn to think. They helped me learn to problem solve, and not just feed me the answers to help me get through my problem, to the point that I didn't need to keep going to them. And my principal would say, you're like figuring things out. And I didn't want to say, yeah, and it's not because of your support, it's because of what I'm doing to help myself, But it's true. If you can be your own advocate, if you can chase your own professional learning, if you can build that tribe, you will be successful faster, because you are problem solving through what you're facing, and you're not waiting for someone to be assigned to you, or to recognize you're in trouble, or for that first evaluation to come back. You are saying, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm going to be honest about it, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I kind of remember back to when I was a beginning teacher, and one of the best words of advice I got is to go to conferences. And I was a French teacher, and I just, like, the first couple of years I taught, I went to the national conference for foreign language teacher, the ACFL conference, and I would drive 7 hours to get there back then. And
Oh
you
my
get
God.
so much information at those type of conferences, right? There's just a plethora of things, and back, this was like 2000 when I went to the first conference. Back then they were giving away so many free resources, right?
Right.
That it was great to, kind of check out other forms of curriculum. And I would use those free resources from the conferences to supplement my teaching.
Absolutely. And then just the connections you make and the friends who become your mentors and your colleagues. And you don't have to stay within your school building. That's one of the larger lessons I've learned is you can get out of your school, you can get out of your district and find people to help you. And that's what's so great about technology, or like you said, conferences. And right now there's a lot of virtual conferences happening for teachers. So as long as you are willing to show up and ask whatever it is you truly need, the doors are going to open for you, whether you're new or you're a veteran.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of teachers out there that feel like they don't have anything to share at conferences. They might be rather on the shy side. And I think, no matter how much experience you have, if you have some way of teaching that's been really successful or an activity you do with students, I encourage those teachers to put that out there and submit proposals to conferences. Because like for foreign language, there's state level, there's regional, there's national, there's, a ton of conferences that teachers can submit ideas to, and most of the time do get accepted.
Yeah. And even if you are like, I am not ready to present, you could present with a partner. You could just go and say, okay, I'm going to have this idea of, I'm going to give one and I'm going to get one. So every idea that I get or gain, I'm going to make sure I share an idea with somebody else. And it could be someone that you're sitting next to, someone in the hallway when you're grabbing a coffee. But saying to yourself, I'm an introvert and I don't want to talk to people, you're not going to be a great teacher, because you're going to limit yourself on the amount of knowledge and skills and ideas you're going to have. I mean, you're only capable of creating so much on your own that you really need all these other people to say, I love your idea, let's add on, or here's a twist, or maybe you should rethink that. And that doesn't happen until you're ready to say, this is awkward. Hi, my name's whatever. And then they laugh and they'll say, yeah, I know it is kind of weird to just become friends with people. And you just start talking. And if you go to a conference and you're just taking, it really sucks the life out of everybody, because you're not contributing. And everyone, whether you're new or a veteran, you have something that you bring to the table that makes you unique and makes you a great educator. And share it, no matter how big or how small, because I guarantee someone hasn't thought of it. So just force yourself to say, okay, I'm going into this session, I'm going to connect with one person and I'm going to share one idea with them. And if you have to prepare ahead of time going to the conference, what ideas you can bring to the table, fine, do what you got to do. But don't go there and just take, because that's certainly not going to help you grow.
Yeah, and I really like that, how you say that. When I've given sessions, I always have either I use a polls.ev or, I just have like the organic discussion with participants in the session. And, I highly encourage people to give me their, if it's classroom management, what are some, strategies for this, that, and the other. And, it's not just me being on the stage, right? So I think that's
right.
To kind of, have teachers ponder, how can they contribute to the conference, just as like if they're doing a virtual, doing something in the chat, or connecting with that presenter maybe after the conference. So tell me a little bit about how you transitioned into your role as a new teacher development coach, and how many years had you been in the classroom at that time, and kind of what enabled you, or how did you get interested in this other role?
Sure. Yeah. I apparently had this leadership quality my entire life, and it would just show up in unique ways, whether I became the captain of a team or someone asked me, here, can you speak to the parents about such and such? And so over time, I just kind of had this skill that wasn't my main focus. I didn't want to go into leadership or business or whatever else. I just wanted to teach. And to me, that wasn't being a leader. And I learned later that is very much being a leader. But I had a student teacher my third year, which I hadn't figured things out. That was way too early, in my opinion. But because of that leadership, they said, you, for this grade level, are the one that we want to pair with somebody. And I think it's because I had gone through so many struggles that I had a lot to give, whether I was perfect or not. I just think that they saw that as an asset.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that for a few years. And then I changed schools, and we had new colleagues that would come on the team, and they would say, okay, can you be a peer mentor and walk these folks through what it's like on campus and everything about your grade level, and just keep them in the loop and check in on how they're progressing with their observations. And slowly I was gaining more leadership. Although I had that natural talent, now I was kind of honing it,
Mm-hmm.
learning how to be more effective with it. And I had thought I wanted to become a principal. Well, first of all, I'd always knew I wanted to be a teacher, and I thought it ended there. So once I accomplished that, I said, well, now what? And with the leadership thing, I thought the next simple progression was to be a principal.
Mm-hmm.
But I shadowed my principal. Thank goodness. She was so kind to say, just come hang out with me for a day and see what it's like. Well, in the first 5 minutes, the whole plan is out the window because the parents coming in asking for something. There's a fire drill. Kids aren't showing up. Someone else is sick. And I'm just like, what is this? This is not at all. I wanted to help teachers in the classroom. So I very quickly learned I can be a leader in a different way. It's not going to look like this, which was great. Like, learning that something isn't for you is helping get you to the right place.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't take any offense to that. She said, it's not for everybody. And I'm like, I'm just shocked that I'm saying this, because I really thought I'd be a great school leader. And she said, you'll figure it out. Something will come. And so I was kind of getting over the fact of the classroom. I was either going to want to switch districts or switch classrooms, grade levels, schools. I needed something to kind of become a new challenge, because I was getting into the routine a little too much.
Yeah.
And then this email came across my inbox and asked if I wanted to coach new teachers. And I'm like, yes, like that's my favorite thing to do. And I had this note card box of all these ideas that I actually have it behind me somewhere down there. I don't know if you can see it, but I had all these ideas that I had read in books, and I would give it to all my student teachers and my mentors and say, here, look through this. And if anything you like, take it. And I said, I'm going to write a book. So while I left the classroom to teach in my district, K-12, these new teachers, I also was simultaneously writing all my note cards into a Word document that would later become a book. And it all just came together, like all the struggle and all the hustle to find my answers and all of the sleepless nights of I can't figure it out, I don't know what I'm doing, really came to fruition to where I felt like now I'm able to give back. I have spent this whole time asking people to pour into me, and now it's my turn to pay it forward. And through the book and then through me coaching, I was able to say, here's how I did it. You don't have to do it like this, but maybe this will help you get started. And then from there, I just said, I love this. Like, it's not time to go back to the classroom. I want to continue coaching. And so I would consult with schools and do PD. And I was like, I guess I need to have my own company and not just work for someone, because I didn't want to be stuck in just my town through what I was doing. And that's where I took my little blog and it became so much more. And now I'm able to just help anybody. I'm not limited to the experience level. I'm not limited to the geographical area. It's just it's really been great for me to learn a new skill set of how to help people. And I've really enjoyed that journey.
So would you say having your own company versus working for a school district has more advantages than disadvantages in terms of just, as you said, working with anybody across the country and not being limited maybe to a district's set curriculum or expectations?
That's interesting. I would say for me and my story and the way it all fell, it happened all at the perfect moment. I could not have left the classroom to start my business. I didn't have the experience I needed. Working for that large company helped me see how to help different people at different schools, because I was doing K-12 and I had only ever taught a few elementary levels. So I needed that middle experience before I could go do something that says, hey, I help everybody and I help everyone in the world. I would not have been ready for that jump. And so each stepping stone was necessary. And so if someone's interested, I would say, think about where your career, your journey has led you. And do you have enough experience to help somebody? And if you haven't taught all grade levels or you haven't worked with people of all grade levels, then you probably shouldn't say, this is what I offer. And for me, the timing worked out great because I was starting my family and I wanted to be home. Like I said, the chips just lined up
Yeah.
perfectly for this to happen. And I may go back into the classroom one day. I may go into a company one day, but for right now, this is the perfect place. I have the experience I need to be able to do it well. I'm still learning and growing because each new person I work with has their own unique set of circumstances. So I'm learning, how another district operates or additional obstacles I hadn't faced before. So it has just been great, but all at the most perfect time.
And so, do you work with teams in schools, or is it more just individual teachers that contact you via social media?
Yeah, I do both. So if a school hires me, it's usually the district,
Mm-hmm.
and they bring in a subset of teachers. So maybe it's anyone who signed up for a specific topic, or maybe it's experience level, or maybe it's subject area. So they usually decide who needs the help and what do they need the help in, and then they ask me to come in, or they say, hey, we have this subgroup of teachers, we want you to work one-on-one. Or people just contact me, like I have a mastermind where different teacher leaders who help other teachers come together and we work it out. So it just really depends. It's morphed into however you think you need it best. I'm available to help. So I do a little bit of both.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know for the listeners who are maybe thinking of, contacting you for some of the trainings that you provide. You talked a little bit right now about a mastermind. So that's for teacher leaders that work in different capacities in school districts, and maybe you all find maybe cohorts of teachers that or districts that might be needing consulting services. How does that work, or how do you support each other in the mastermind?
So it started as a coaching course, meaning well, let's back up. It actually starts before that. I was always helping teachers, whether they were new or veteran or whatever. And then these teachers who coach teachers kept coming to me saying, hey, I know what you're doing and how you're helping people. Can you teach me how to do it? And I thought, I've never thought about helping someone who's doing what I'm doing, but sure. And so over time it morphed, and I found myself saying the same things over and over again. So I created a course called the Teacher Coaching Course. And then folks would say, okay, I loved it. It helped me, but I really need to ask you some questions, or I need you to help me take it and apply it to my situation. And I thought, okay, so you need coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that a big part of what people who support teachers are facing is it's so isolating. There's usually one coach in a building, whether you're called a facilitator or a coach or a curriculum designer, whatever your name is, there's usually only one of you. And it's very isolating. So I set up this community, and I only take 10 people at a time because I can only serve so many in a setting. And again, it's nationwide, and they basically come and we meet like this on Zoom, and we talk about whatever we're facing. We come up with ideas. We hold each other accountable. We meet through Facebook on when we're not meeting here live on Zoom, and support each other and cheer each other on. And so you have the course, and then you have that community. And then is a third step. If you still feel like you need really some one-on-one, then you can upgrade to that. So it's kind of like a 3-tiered system depending on what you need. Some people just want the course, they want to do it themselves. Some people really want the community aspect, and then some just really need to sit down, roll up the sleeves, and work together. But I have other courses that I created to help people that aren't just teacher leaders, because people contact me of all backgrounds, and I wanted to make sure that there was stuff out there you could at least consume, whether it's my blog or my podcast or purchase a course, because I just, again, found myself saying the same things over and over again. And that wasn't a good use of our time. I want you to get the basics and then talk to me, and then we can go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting to find out how that works for teacher leaders. I'm in a school leader mastermind. So it sounds like a little bit of the same type, but you guys are using that course as a resource, and then also,
Right.
that tiered system for the individual support. So that's interesting to hear about. Of everything we talked about today, what's one thing in particular you'd like listeners to remember?
I just want you to create your career for yourself. I don't want you to stay at a school that's not helping you grow. I don't want you to stay in a grade level or a subject area that's really not your passion. And I think you can be a great educator even if you decide, hey, I don't want my own classroom. I want to be a teacher leader, or I want to go present at conferences, or whatever it is. But I want you to have the freedom to make those choices. I don't want you to feel, well, this is my first job and the first grade I ever taught, so here I am, I'm stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want you to think you have to wait for a professional development session to happen, or a assigned mentor to learn. You can create your own journey. And that's the most rewarding part of my story, is I was such an advocate for me getting better. Like, I wasn't going to accept me not being okay with this. I didn't want to struggle anymore. And so if someone can see themselves in my story and say, gosh, that's exactly how I'm feeling, then I want you to start thinking about how can you upgrade your knowledge, whether it's reading a book, attending a conference, reaching out to other educators. Like, find a way to commit to learning more yourself instead of waiting for things to just happen. And the greatest teachers are the ones that are flexible. They change on a dime. They're not trying to just be a robot and just sit back. And I'm sure your listeners are not like that, but I don't want us to ever get to that point where you look back and you say, I just lost my way. I could have been so much more.
Yeah, that's those are great words of advice to end with. Having, you know, that growth mindset and that continuous learning mindset, and, you know, change things up if you're bored or if you're stuck in your current position. Yeah, I think you know, more teachers hopefully that are listening will you know, kind of think about what the next step would be for them and how they can make that happen. So thank you so much, Gretchen, for being on the Out of the Trenches podcast. Where can people find you online?
Oh, yes. Please connect with me. You can go to alwaysalesson.com. You'll see my social media handles all at the top. You pick the platform you like and reach out to me. Something's going to pop up to ask you if you want tips and tricks for the classroom. You can sign up to be on my newsletter. The blog is there. The podcast is there. It's kind of just my hub. Like, get to know me, see if there's something in there that could help you. And again, if you really just need some ideas or you want to talk things through, shoot me an email, Gretchen@alwaysalesson.com, and we'll figure it out together. I don't want you to feel alone, and I don't want you to get the wrong information. I'm not saying I have all the right answers, but I can at least put my head together with yours and try and come up with a good solution.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experience and a little bit about your company with the listeners on the Out of the Trenches podcast. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.